Welcome or welcome back. We're doing your full moon horoscope for the full moon in Gemini, which is the last full moon of the calendar year, happening at 4:02 a.m. Eastern. That is 1:02 a.m. Pacific time at 23 degrees and 53 minutes of Gemini. If you guys are new here, my name is Leah, aka the Cosmic Rose. We do tarot, astrology, and spirituality here on my channel. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't already, so you can stay up to date on the current astrology as well as your all sign tarot horoscopes and other spiritual topics. All the information for personal astrology and or tarot readings can be found in the description box or the pinned comment. So guys, if you follow astrology, you know that the astrology has been quite hectic and we are going into a very hectic and eventful 2025. We are coming to the end of the calendar year, so this is the last full moon of the calendar year, and it's happening at 23 degrees of Gemini. This full moon is also happening simultaneously with Mars retrograde. Mars retrograde is in the sign of Leo. Mars will retrograde back into the sign of Cancer, back to 17 degrees of Cancer. So looking to the early degrees of Leo and late degrees of Cancer are going to be very significant in your natal chart because they are very significant in the collective energy right now. Mercury has also been retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius, and Mercury is actually stationary direct at the very time of this full moon. It will station direct just a few hours after the height of the lunation cycle or the full moon. We know that a full moon is a direct opposition with the sun and the moon. So we have the sun at 23 degrees of Sagittarius with the moon at 23 degrees of Gemini. Being that this is a full moon in the sign of Gemini, this full moon is ruled by that Mercury, which is stationary direct in Sagittarius. Mercury is actually in detriment in the sign of Sagittarius because Mercury is at home in the opposite sign of Gemini. So because this is a full moon in Gemini, we always want to look to the new moon, which started off this lunation cycle. So we're looking back to the beginning of June. That is when we had the new moon in Gemini. So think about what you were doing, what you were experiencing, what intentions you were setting around the first few weeks of June, and that will give you an indication of what is coming to culmination. And look to the Gemini area of your chart more specifically, what house is ruled by Gemini, for more specifics. Now, probably the most important thing that you need to know about this full moon is that it is in a T-square with Neptune. Neptune is at 27 degrees of Pisces, and this is a pretty tight orb of a T-square. It's only about a 3-degree orb. So this really blurs the lines of what is truth, what is honest, what is clear. Things can be very foggy when we have a harsh aspect with Neptune. It makes things very idealized, very romanticized, and we may not be looking at things in a logical way, which we need to emphasize during a full moon in Gemini. We need to be clear with our communication and our speech. Gemini does rule things like communication and our speech. It also rules things like social media, the media in general, journalism, writing, print, information, data. And this energy is even more so energized because the sun is getting very close to the galactic center. If you guys aren't familiar with what the galactic center is, the galactic center is actually the center of our Milky Way galaxy. So it's an energized point when we're looking at it from an astrological point of view. We have a lot of mutable energy and mutable squares going on at this time. We have Jupiter, which has been in square to Saturn and Pisces. Jupiter is retrograde in the sign of Gemini. It's not in conjunction with this full moon, but it is close by, so it's something worth noting. All Gemini placements are going to feel this full moon. Also mutable sign placements, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. If you have planets anywhere from, I would say, like 20 to 25 degrees of the mutable signs, you guys are going to feel this full moon on a very personal level. Now, we also have to keep in mind, because this is in a tight T-square with Neptune, although Neptune does rule things like escapism and idealizing things, romanticizing things, not seeing things clearly, seeing things through rose-colored glasses, it does rule the higher octave of Venus. It's all about unconditional love. It's a higher vibrational energy of spiritual love. This isn't like romantic love or, your childhood crush type of love. This is real, universal, spiritual, higher love that we're moving into when we go into, say, the 5th dimension, if you believe in that type of thing. Neptune and Pisces energy really rules things like our dreams, our intuition, our connection to God and the divine. It's artistic creativity and our heightened sense of love and empathy and compassion for other people. Now, we really have to make sure that we're looking at things in a very Gemini type of way, a very logical type of way, while also looking at the bigger picture. We have the sun in Sagittarius, which is all about the future. It's about the vision. It's about our goals and the long term. And remember, all this energy is in a T-square to Neptune. So we need to make sure that we're not giving other people or giving the world too much empathy and compassion at our own detriment. Mars is retrograde in the sign of Leo currently, so this is really reviewing ourselves and who our truest self is, what our authentic self is, what our truth is. This is about speaking our truth, being honest with ourselves and others, while also moving from a place of love, but not moving from a place of love that's going to be to our own detriment. Part of universal love is love for self, compassion for self, and empathy for self, and remembering to stay true to ourselves no matter what. We could certainly have a heightened emotional response to things like news, the media, social media, any sort of information that's coming at us. It's very important to stay grounded in the facts, look at the actual facts, the actual data, the actual information that's being presented to you, and use your own discernment and decision-making skills to move forward. We can be feeling extremely emotional. It's a full moon. It's squaring Neptune. Neptune is, the ruler of Pisces. It's a very emotional, watery energy, so we have to not be swept away by our overwhelming emotions at this time. Again, look to see where Gemini is in your chart, which house is ruled by Gemini, and this will give you more information about how this is affecting you on a personal level. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind that this is happening in the third decan of Gemini because it's happening at 23 degrees of Gemini, and this decan of Gemini is ruled by Uranus, or the Ten of Swords. Now, the Ten of Swords, of course, is the painful ending card. It is all about deep wounds, sometimes betrayal, loss, crisis, ruin, failure, exhaustion, a dead end, goodbyes, painful endings, and there's nowhere to go but up, right? Because you're kind of at rock bottom. It's despair, helplessness, and feeling like you have no options in life. You're not able to make logical sense of the situation, but the good thing about this card is there really is nowhere to go but up. That is the beauty in the rock bottom. That is the beauty of the painful ending. It is time to rewrite your story in a sense. Now, we know that Gemini is the third sign of the zodiac. It is mutable air. It is ruled by planet Mercury. We mentioned that Mercury has been retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius. Mercury is stationary direct at the time of this full moon. We will get into that in just a moment, as well as some of the other aspects. But Gemini energy is very childlike. It's very versatile, very witty, very funny, very communicative, very social, clever, expressive, childlike, lively, restless, high-strung. Can be a bit fickle, but it's light, it's airy, and maybe a little bit inconsistent. Gemini is all about our logic, our intellect, what we're learning, right? The information that we're bringing in, not the information that we're giving out in Sagittarius. It's about using our decision-making skills with the information that's presented to us. All right, now diving a little bit further into the aspects, guys, we know that this full moon is in square or in a T-square to Neptune at 27 degrees of Pisces, and this is a challenging aspect. Any harsh aspect to Neptune is going to add a lot of emotional energy, but lots of creative and lots of intuitive energy as well. It's very important that we stay grounded and remember to stay connected to the higher intuitive and spiritual realms of life, listening to God, our intuition, and our psychic abilities. But this is a full moon in Gemini, so we cannot throw logic out the window. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to look at the facts and information, not living in la la land. Neptune and Pisces energy really has a tendency to be prone to escapism. So it's really important that we're not numbing things. We're not trying to numb our intense emotions with anything like substances, addictions to alcohol, drugs, television, junk food, sex, whatever the case may be for you. It's very important that we're staying mindful of what we're doing to escape reality. We need to take a practical approach. We could also be very unsure of our movement forward or unclear on things. We could feel like there's things that haven't been revealed to us, or we're not really sure of our path forward. We could be more sensitive, more empathetic, more compassionate. It's important to move from love, but again, not to our own detriment. We have to overcome insecurities, overcome our doubts, overcome anything that is preventing us from moving forward just because we don't know all the answers to things. We need to look at the facts and information of the information that we do have and the information that's presented to us at the time of this full moon and move forward with that in mind. It's almost like a spiritual test of our integrity. And I've been saying with Saturn and Pisces has really been about our spiritual integrity and what is real and what is fantasy. We can also utilize this T-square for our creativity. And we know that creativity can connect us to higher realms. So for utilizing our creative talents, our creative abilities, we are also heightening our intuition and our psychic ability. The only other aspect that I really want to mention for what the full moon is directly making is a sextile to Chiron. Chiron has been in the sign of Aries for quite some time now because Chiron moves very slowly. And this is emotional healing of the mind. It's healing the mind of the self. It's really thinking about the self and how far we have come with Chiron's journey through the sign of Aries. Chiron in Aries has really been teaching us about our wounds of the self, wounds of the ego, wounds of our child self. Gemini and Aries are both childlike signs. It's logically addressing our vulnerabilities and our trauma from the past and exploring our old pain or the things that we've overcome in order to generate some sort of healing. We could be triggered right now with that sextile, but remember that sextiles are a supportive aspect. So in reality, you're being triggered for a reason, and it's supposed to cultivate some sort of healing through acknowledgement of those wounds or those triggers of the ego. Now, as I mentioned, we do have Mercury, which is stationary direct just a few hours after this full moon in Gemini, and this really energizes the mind, right? We have Mercury stationary direct, we have Mars, which is retrograde in the sign of Leo. Mars retrograde in Leo right now is really creating a lot of inner frustration, inner turmoil, anger. It's creating a lot of drama, where drama doesn't necessarily have to be. All Leo placements have been like, what the fuck is going on? So my heart goes out to my fellow Leo placements, but it's okay. It's supposed to bring up these inner frustrations and these inner triggers, right? It's supposed to be doing that. And this can really get into our mind. When Mercury is stationary, Mercury is very direct and to the point. When it's retrograde, it's more introverted, not very communicative. So we need to be very careful about how we're expressing our angers or our frustrations or our triggers, making sure that we're not stirring up conflict with our words or saying something that we can't take back. We're also reevaluating our motivations and our desires, what we want in the future, what drives us, or what is essentially holding us back from movement. We need to utilize our problem-solving skills and our conflict resolution, while also being expressive in our communication, but not being overly expressive or violent with our communication or aggressive with our communication. We need to be able to articulate ourselves effectively, especially when it comes to conflict. Definitely look and see where Mars is retrograde in your chart. This is happening in the 1st degrees of Leo. Mars is going to be at 5 degrees of Leo during the time of this full moon. So whichever house is ruled by Leo, this area of your life is going to be affected by this inner turmoil, inner frustration, inner anger, or conflict that you might be experiencing. But look and see where this Mars retrograde is happening, and that will give you more context. Also, utilizing anything that gets us into our physical body. I always say this, but any sort of somatic work, breath work, working out, or anything that gets the energy out of our physical body. Also, Leo is a sign that is all about our creativity and our pleasure, our joy. So what brings us joy? What really sparks our passion? What lights our fire? What fuels the flame? What are we truly passionate about? And doing those things can help burn off some of that inner frustration and inner turmoil or conflict that you're experiencing in the Leo area of your chart. Also, when we're looking at Pluto, we know that Pluto has just ingressed into the sign of Aquarius, is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and Venus has been in conjunction for a little over a week with Pluto. Venus is now at 9 degrees of Aquarius and is actually in opposition to Mars, retrograde at 5 degrees of Leo. So we've been experiencing this transit throughout the week leading up to this full moon, but there's been a lot of relational energy. We know that the South Node has been in the sign of Libra. We're letting go of past relational dynamics and we're moving towards our North Node in Aries, right? So there's been a lot of relationship themes that have been coming up with Venus, which has been conjunct to Pluto, and now Venus is in opposition to Mars retrograde. This is the masculine and the feminine, and it brings up a lot of tension and conflict in regards to our one-on-one connections, especially romantic partnerships and marriages. It's challenging our value systems with aggression, passion, desire, unresolved conflicts, and power struggles. This is very intense emotionally, and it's really all about addressing conflict head on and being able to find a middle ground. Anytime we have an opposition, a lot of times it's going to deal with our relationships with other people. So look and see where the Leo Aquarius axis is in your chart. And that's where you could be experiencing power struggles or conflict or just some sort of dynamic that there needs to be found a middle ground. We also have that mutable square I've been talking about with Jupiter retrograde. Jupiter's at 15 degrees of Gemini in square to Saturn and Pisces at 13 degrees. And these are very contradictory energies, where Jupiter is all about expansion and growth and, getting bigger. Saturn is all about restriction and constriction and discipline. It's about the long term. Jupiter is a visionary of the future, so I guess they can relate on that level, but they're very contradictory energies and almost polar opposites. So when they're in a square aspect, especially a mutable square, this is really challenging us to grow in the Gemini area of our chart, and it's very much challenging for the mind. It's all about mind over matter. Our mind creates our reality, and this is especially true right now. Are we disciplining our mind? Are we putting in the work towards our long-term goals and our vision for the future and our values in alignment with those actions for the future? Where Saturn is all about the past, Jupiter is all about the future. Jupiter is optimism, Saturn is pessimism. Jupiter is expansion, Saturn is contraction, but we can feel very depressed and restricted in that area of our chart right now. So it's important to look to the Jupiter area of your chart or the Gemini area of your chart on where you're expanding and where you're rewiring some sort of data or some sort of information or some sort of logical processing. Overall, guys, I think this is a very energizing and powerful full moon in the sign of Gemini, and it's certainly a way to end off the calendar year. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And we're going to be back in 2 weeks for the new moon. And It's going to be an eventful holiday season, to say the least. With Mars retrograde, the fixed signs are certainly feeling that Mars retrograde. Cardinal signs will feel it when it moves back into Cancer, but it's a collective energy. It's the second to rarest retrograde, happening once only every 2 years or so, 26 months. So, you know, Mars retrograde in Leo hasn't happened in almost 10 years. So any Leo placements or fixed sign placements, you guys are feeling this. Make sure that we're channeling our energy, our aggression, our anger, our frustration, or our inner turmoil or things that are stirring within us. Make sure we're channeling that into something, like channeling it into some sort of creative project or getting it out through our physical body in some way. Some sort of somatic practice would be helpful. Meditation would be extremely helpful at this time. But there is a lot of astrological energy. This is a full moon that's all about the mind, data, information, communication. It's about being social, but I feel like we're not necessarily going to feel extremely social, but we need to get ourselves out of that comfort zone and learn to trust ourselves, learn to trust the information that we have, the wisdom that we have. The sun is still in Sagittarius, and definitely looking at the facts, not being illusioned by that Neptunian fog of rose-colored glasses or romanticizing a situation. We need to look at things clearly, as clear as possible, as logically as possible, while also connecting to our intuition. I also forgot to mention there's a little bit of a Uranian influence because we have the sun, which is in a quincunx or an in conjunction to Uranus and Taurus, and it's a pretty exact aspect. It's only about 1 degree. So, you know, there is a little bit of an identity crisis, or like needing to figure out how to express our individuality or our authenticity, and we're not able to do that. It's like, you know, in conjunctions, you're not able to find a middle ground. It's very, like, to me, it presents itself almost like an opposition, but you're not able to find that middle ground. So it's a little more challenging in my personal opinion, even though I think oppositions are one of the hardest aspects in astrology. I think an in conjunction from the sun to Uranus can really be an identity crisis and not really knowing how to express our truest selves, or being afraid to do so, especially with this mutable T-square. We need to learn to express our truest self, not second guessing ourselves, and being communicative in our authenticity, not being overly concerned with what conventional standards are or what society's expectations of you are, and just being true to yourself. It's certainly not a time to conform to what the rest of the world is doing or what everyone else expects of you. It's about being who you want to be and moving forward with your true values. Venus is in the sign of Aquarius, as well as Pluto. So that is all I have for you for this full moon in Gemini, my loves. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. My love goes out to each and every one of you. Thanks for being here. Personal readings for astrology and tarot can be found at the link in the pinned comment, as well as the description box. And yeah, that is all I have for you guys. Happy full moon in Gemini. I love you.